Lisa had always wanted to live alone. She had spent years sharing apartments with roommates, loud, messy people who never cleaned up after themselves. So when she finally found a small one-bedroom unit in an old but charming building downtown, she felt like she had won the lottery. The rent was affordable, the location was perfect, and best of all, she had the entire place to herself. But soon after moving in, Lisa began to notice something strange. It started as soft noises at night, faint, scratching sounds like something shifting inside the walls. She assumed it was just old pipes or mice, but the sounds never seemed to follow a pattern. Then came the whispers. At first she thought it was the neighbors. The apartment walls were thin, and she often heard muffled voices from the unit next. But these whispers were different. They didn't sound like they were coming from another apartment. Instead, they seemed to drift through the air, carried by the vents in her ceiling. One night, as she lay in bed scrolling through her phone, she heard it clearly for the first time. Lisa. Her body tensed. She sat up, her heart pounding. Had she imagined it? She muted her phone and held her breath, straining to listen. Nothing. Shaking her head, she tried to dismiss it. Maybe she had been half asleep and dreamed it. But the next night it happened again. And the night after that. The whispers grew more distinct. They didn't just say her name anymore. They murmured strange, broken phrases. Come closer. Help us. We are here. Lisa tried to rationalize it. Maybe there was an open vent somewhere connecting her apartment to another. Maybe someone downstairs was playing a prank. She even mentioned it to her landlord, who laughed and assured her that the building's ventilation system had been sealed off years ago. No way sound is traveling through those vents, he said. Trust me, if it was, you'd be hearing a lot, worse than whispers. These old walls carry noise like crazy. That should have reassured her, it didn't. One night, unable to shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her, Lisa decided to investigate. She pulled a chair beneath the largest vent in her bedroom and climbed up. The metal slats were old and dusty. She pressed her ear against it, listening. Silence. And then, a giggle. Lisa yelped and almost lost her balance. She scrambled down from the chair, her breath coming fast and shallow. That had not been her imagination. Something was in the vents. She tried to convince herself it was just a prank. Maybe some kid had crawled into the building's old ductwork. It wasn't unheard of. But as she lay in bed that night staring at the vent, she knew that explanation didn't make sense. Then the whispers returned. Lisa, we see you. Her blood ran cold. She didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, she called an HVAC specialist. When the technician arrived, he seemed skeptical but agreed to check the vents. He unscrewed the grate, shined a flashlight inside, and frowned. This is weird, he muttered. The vents don't actually connect to anything. Just dead. Space behind the walls. They shouldn't even be open. Lisa's stomach twisted. So, there's nothing in there? Nothing alive, he said, giving her an odd look. I can seal them up if you want. She nodded quickly. Please. That night, she slept better than she had in weeks. The vents were sealed. The whispers were gone. And she told herself it had all been in her head. But 2 nights later, she woke up to a sound that turned her blood to ice. A slow, deliberate scratching, coming from inside the vent. Lisa sat up, trembling. That wasn't possible. The vents were sealed. The scratching stopped. Then the whispers returned. Louder this time. Closer. Lisa, let us in. She clapped her hands over her ears. Leave me alone, she shouted. Silence. And then, a single screw popped off the vent cover and clattered to the floor. Lisa bolted from the bed and grabbed her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone in my vents, she whispered. Please send someone. The dispatcher kept her on the line, assuring her that officers were on their way. Lisa stayed by the door, watching the vent, heart hammering in her chest. The whispers had stopped. The room was deathly silent. Then the vent cover slowly began to push outward. Lisa let out a strangled scream and bolted out of the apartment. She didn't stop running until she was outside on the street, gasping for air. When the police arrived, they searched her apartment thoroughly. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, looking pale. "You said the vents were sealed?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Then you might want to see this." They led her back inside. Her bedroom vent was completely open. The screws lay scattered on the floor. And inside the vent, deep in the shadows, something had been carved into the metal. A message: "Thank you for opening the door." Lisa moved out the next day. She never heard the whispers again. But sometimes late at night she dreamed of small, pale fingers gripping the metal bars, of dark, hollow eyes watching her. And when she woke up, she swore she could still hear it. Whispered just beneath her breath, "Lisa, come back, we miss you." When Daniel moved into the old Victorian house on Oak Street, he felt like he had found a dream home. It was spacious, affordable, and had a rustic charm that modern houses lacked. The realtor had mentioned that it had been unoccupied for years, but Daniel didn't mind. He was ready to make it his own. The house was in surprisingly good condition, except for one thing. On the second floor, at the end of the hallway, was a door that wouldn't open. It was locked, and no key had been provided. Daniel assumed it was just an old storage closet, forgotten by the previous owners. But something about the door felt wrong. The first night in the house, Daniel was woken up by a soft thudding noise. He sat up in bed, disoriented. The sound was distant, rhythmic, like something knocking. He followed the sound down the hall, stopping in front of the locked door. His pulse quickened. Someone was knocking. On the other side of the door, he swallowed, hard, forcing a laugh. "It's just the pipes," he muttered, backing away. "Old house noises." But the knocking didn't stop. It continued every night, always at the same time. Midnight. Each time he would lie in bed trying to ignore it. The knocking would start soft, then grow louder, as if whatever was inside was becoming more impatient. One night, he finally worked, up the courage to knock back. As soon as his knuckles hit the wood, the knocking stopped. Silence. Then, a single knock. Soft, slow, deliberate. Daniel's stomach clenched. The house felt colder, as if something was waiting, watching. The next day, Daniel decided he needed to open the door. He hired a locksmith to pick the lock. The man worked on it for nearly an hour, muttering under his breath. Finally, he stepped back, shaking his head. "This door ain't meant to be opened," he said, packing up his tools. "It's been sealed from the inside." Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. "That's not possible. There's no other way in, no window." The locksmith just shrugged. "Some things are better left alone." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The knocking was louder, more insistent. Around midnight, he heard something new. A whisper. It was faint, almost lost beneath the knocking, but he could make out the words. "Let me out." Daniel bolted upright, his heart hammering. He grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and crept toward the door. "Who are you?" he whispered. The voice on the other side sounded desperate. "Please, help me." A chill ran down Daniel's spine. Was it a prank, a recording, or was someone inside the room? Summoning all his courage, he grabbed a crowbar and wedged it into the doorframe. If the lock wouldn't budge, he'd force the door open. With a final, determined push, the door burst open. Daniel staggered back, coughing as a cloud of dust filled the air. He shone his flashlight into the room. It was small, almost like a forgotten attic space. The walls were lined with decaying wallpaper, the air thick with the scent of mildew and something else. Something rotten. And then he saw it. A wooden chair. And in that chair, a figure. Daniel's breath hitched. The figure was slumped forward, skeletal hands resting on its lap. The clothes were tattered, the flesh long gone. But the most horrifying part, the mouth. The lower jaw was missing, the skull cracked open as if something had tried to crawl out. Daniel staggered back, bile rising in his throat. That thing had been alive once, trapped, sealed in, and it had been knocking. For years, as he turned to run, the door slammed shut behind him, and from the darkness a voice whispered, "You shouldn't have opened the door." Daniel fumbled for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The room was suffocatingly small, the walls seeming to close in on him. Then, the corpse in the chair moved. It lifted its head slowly, bones creaking. Empty eye sockets stared at him, hollow and endless. "You, let me out," Daniel screamed, slamming his fists against the door. "Let me out!" But the room shifted. The walls changed, morphing into something ancient, something wrong. The wallpaper peeled away, revealing deep claw marks underneath. The air thickened, a putrid stench filling his nostrils. The skeleton stood, bones rattling, its head tilting at an unnatural angle. "Now, you stay." Daniel's vision blurred as a force dragged him backward. He clawed at the floor, screaming, but something was pulling him into the darkness, into the chair. His body froze, his muscles locked. He could feel his skin tightening, his lungs burning, his jaw ached, and then darkness. Weeks later, a new family moved in, a couple with their young daughter. They loved the house, except for the locked door on the second floor. One night, the daughter woke up to a sound. She tiptoed down the hall and placed her tiny hand on the wood. And from inside, a voice, dry, rasping, desperate, whispered, "Let me out." Ethan had always taken the last train home. It was quiet, mostly empty, and gave him time to think. The dull hum of the tracks beneath him, the occasional flickering of fluorescent lights, the rhythmic swaying of the carriage. It was comforting, in a way, until one night, when everything changed. That night, Ethan found himself alone in the carriage, save for a single passenger, a man in a dark suit sitting at the far end of the train. Something about him felt wrong. His posture was rigid, his head tilted slightly forward, as if he were staring at something unseen. His hands rested unnaturally still on his lap. He didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, unmoving like a mannequin. Ethan shifted uncomfortably and looked away. Maybe the guy was asleep with his eyes open. Maybe he was just some weirdo. But the air felt heavier, the temperature of the carriage dropping. The train pulled into a station. The doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. But no one got on. No one got off. Ethan glanced at the man. He hadn't moved, hadn't even flinched. The doors slid shut and the train rumbled forward. Ethan tried to distract himself, scrolling through his phone. But when he glanced up at the train map, his stomach twisted. The next stop wasn't one he recognized. In fact, none of the stops were familiar. What the hell? His station was 3 stops away, but according to the map, it didn't exist. Neither did any of the others. Panic tightened in his chest. He turned to the man in the suit. "Hey, do you know where this train is going?" No response. The man just sat there, frozen. Ethan stood, moving a little closer. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Nothing. Ethan swallowed hard and reached out. He barely tapped the man's shoulder when the stranger's head snapped toward him. His face was wrong. His mouth was stretched too wide, lips peeling back over jagged, yellowed teeth. His eyes were hollow, just black, empty sockets. And worst of all, his skin was moving. Ethan stumbled back, heart hammering. The train lurched violently, lights flickering, the air thick with something rancid. The man's mouth curled into a grotesque grin as his body twitched. Then the train slowed. The doors slid open, and people got on. Not normal people. They shuffled in, dozens of them. Their bodies were gaunt, limbs bent at unnatural angles, faces twisted in silent screams. Their eyes were missing, just gaping black voids. The smell of rotting flesh filled the air as they took their seats, their heads turning in eerie unison toward Ethan. He bolted for the doors, but they slammed shut. The train rumbled forward. Ethan banged on the doors, his breath coming in short gasps. "Let me out." No response. The passengers remained motionless, their soulless eyes fixed on him. The man in the suit stood, his bones cracked as he took a step forward. Ethan staggered back. "Stay away." The figure twitched, then lunged. Ethan screamed, dodging just in time. He ran down the aisle, weaving between the seated horrors, their heads turning to follow his movements. Then, the train screeched to a halt. The doors hissed open. Ethan didn't wait. He sprinted out onto the platform, only to realize there was nothing there. No exit, no station signs, just an endless, fog-covered platform stretching into the dark. He turned back. The train was gone, and the platform was no longer empty. Passengers had followed him, their mouths opened in unison, releasing a single deafening scream. And then, darkness. The last train pulled into the station. A tired businessman stepped inside, glancing around. The carriage was mostly empty, save for a man in a dark suit sitting stiffly at the far end. The businessman took a seat, sighing. He didn't notice the stranger's skin shifting. Didn't see his lips curl into a smile. Didn't realize the last train never really went where it was supposed to. Ethan awoke in darkness. His head throbbed, his body aching as though he had been dropped from a great height. The air was thick, suffocating. He tried to move, only to realize he couldn't. Something held him down. It was the seats. They had wrapped around his body, tightening, restraining him. The train was moving again, rattling over the tracks, though he had no idea where it was. He wasn't alone. The passengers sat in their seats staring at him, their mouths hung open in twisted, unnatural grins. Their flesh pulsed, shifting and stretching as if something inside was trying to get out. The man in the suit stood before him. "You are one of us now." Ethan tried to scream, but no sound came out. His throat was raw, his breath stolen from him. The train never stopped. The passengers never left. And Ethan knew, with a terrible certainty, that he would ride it forever. Years passed, decades. Time had no meaning on the train. One night, a woman boarded. Tired, distracted, unaware. She glanced around, sighing as she took a seat. She didn't notice Ethan, didn't see his hollow eyes watching her, didn't realize his lips had begun to curl into a slow, unnatural smile. She was just another passenger, just like him, just like all the others.